Hello, everyone. Welcome to PCP. Wow. Forgive me. I'm Juhadre. This is Zeno and the Snurks. We're going to do a podcast for you about the Progenitor League circuit. How are you doing, Zeno?
I'm doing well today. What about yourself, Juhadre?
I'm a little embarrassed that the intro to this episode is so much lower quality than the last one we did.
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do, you know. That's what happens when you have, a specialized first time live episode, you know?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, the intro by Admin was incredible. I think he nailed it, did it perfect, but the editing on that, listen everybody, if you didn't watch the YouTube version of PCP for March, yeah, I can get dates. For March, please go look on our YouTube channel, search Progenitor Circuit. It is in the playlist of PCP or podcasts. I can't remember which one, but it's there. Very, very good. Our editor, Comic Crash, did a magnificent job putting that all together. So go ahead, take the time to do that. You'll love it, I promise. You don't have to listen to the whole episode if you've listened to it on another platform, but at least get the intro in there because it's incredible.
Yep, that's a Juhadre guarantee for you.
Absolutely. So, Zeno, March is in the books. That's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to start off by reminding everyone that our streams are on YouTube. And the link to sign up for PLC tournaments is on Battlefy now, not Start.gg. So make sure to adjust your typical habits for searching on YouTube and Battlefy as opposed to Twitch and Start.gg. And we're into the semifinals of March. So, Zeno, we had a becoming classic of Team Unknown versus Royal Blue Esports. And both of these teams, former champions, very strong contenders. It was a terrific game to watch as they clashed in the semis.
Maybe I'm slightly biased here, but I actually enjoyed the semifinals more than the finals.
There were things about it that were a little more exciting. For example, Death, the mid laner for Team Unknown, actually played bottom lane, played the Twitch, and got first blood at like a minute 30.
Yeah, that was really cool to see.
And forgive us, audience, that's all I know because the overlay crashed, and so there wasn't even a game timer on at the time. But what I do know is when it came up, it was at like 2 minutes and 5 seconds. So there were no minions. Just he popped out at level 1 and just destroyed somebody. It was crazy. And
I mean, people... Oh, sorry?
That's one of the things that I think made it a little bit more exciting because, spoiler alert, first blood in the finals was at like 5 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that. It was really, really late.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot later than we usually see in PLC, that's for sure.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, the thing though is that people a lot of the times greatly underestimate Twitch's strength, especially at level 1. Because not only is it a stealth for him to get into a perfect position to just auto-attack the enemy, but you also have the bonus attack speed that he gets out of stealth. So put that on top of, a very solid rune, and yeah, you can just do some serious damage. I even remember it was kind of a go-to strategy to just have Twitch start Q level 1 and just start the match by ganking mid sometimes in previous seasons.
Well, you can't do that anymore, as we talked about the lane swap mechanic that was released last patch. But it turns out the strategy still works in a 2v2 at level 1 on the bottom lane. All right.
Something that I thought was really cool with that game was I thought for sure that Team Unknown would have that, locked down when they won that early dragon fight. But then Silas just came in and just helped catch the team back up with his triple kill.
Yeah, it was actually, you know what? I think I have that one marked here. That was at 21 minutes and 50 seconds of game time. or rather video time, where Zeri jumps over the Dragon Pit wall, gets caught. Team Unknown kills 3 of them, I think. And then the Silas and Lilia come in and just wreck everybody. It was terrifying.
Even though Silas got low on health during that fight, you gotta remember that Silas's healing increases when he has lower health.
Exactly. And for extra context, that was at 2150. It was over 30 seconds of fight, because my notes here say that the fight lasted until 2232. So it was this weird trade where Team Unknown killed 2 or 3, and they thought that they had everything that they needed, and then suddenly Silas, and that he was being bullied too, is the thing, is he was actually behind. Team Unknown were doing a really good job. The Lissandra was keeping him away from the minions. He wasn't getting very much gold. He was getting pushed out of lane. And then he just shows up at the end of this fight and becomes unstoppable the rest of the game. It was terrifying.
Yeah, it was definitely a very good example of an application of limit testing. Like, it's clear that, the player was very familiar with Silas, his mechanics, and his strengths, and he knew, okay, I can definitely make something out of this situation. I've tested my limits in the past.
Going further into the game, the reason I have that timestamp marked is because one of the things that Royal Blue does is they just stay for fights. When there are times where teams will disengage when they know they've lost, or after one of their teammates dies, and they just look for something else to do on the map. But in this game in particular, Royal Blue was like, oh, wait, we're fighting, and then they'd collapse and just stay in it. And so there were a lot of long, drawn-out fights that looked pretty one-sided and then ended up flipping by the end of it. And it's one of the big strengths that Royal Blue has, is they'll roll with the punches, they'll lean into the aggression and just continue to be what they want to be, because that's what they want to be.
Yeah, and that's no fault of Team Unknown's either, because when you go and you watch those fights in that game, you can see that Team Unknown was especially Taric was getting off some really solid ults that were helping turn fights around. That's how they got those initial 3 kills in that 21-minute fight anyway, was a well-timed Taric ult,
Yes, in fact, it's the only reason it worked, because Twitch was down to 200 health or something like that. No, it was less than that now that I'm remembering it. And it was the very last second, gets hit with the Taric ult, picks up the last kill, and then they roam up to try and go for the Drake, and that's when the Silas and the Lilia show up. And you're right, it was Taric ult, which is a Team Unknown classic, and it was good to see it again. Kiroro always pilots that champion really well.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though, is Taric's just a terrifying champion if you know how to use him, especially you have to time that ult so well because of the delay.
Would you say it's terrifying?
Yeah, you could say it's terrifying.
Nice.
You could say that when someone uses a Taric ult efficiently, that's a dazzling display.
Hey. So that actually leads me to another point that I wanted to bring up. Shazbot on the cast said something that I didn't remember, but when I was watching over the game again, I decided to write down word for word. Quote, "You can't feel safe on bot lane against Team Unknown," end quote. And it doesn't matter who is down there. We saw Valentine fill in, and that was still the strategy with Kiroro. Calavir typically down there with Kiroro, solid. Death playing this game, solid. And it's true. The bottom lane is Team Unknown's place to play, and they're always doing it. They're always trying to get that marksman ahead, and Kiroro setting up these plays constantly on every champion. And it's one of the things we've come to expect from Team Unknown, but it still was a joy to watch this game over again.
Well, it's really funny because, people complain about ADC being underpowered in, a solo queue and everything, but in a team setting, an ADC really does keep the team together. They stick to their name, and they're there to carry the game, to deal the damage, and to help the team lead to victory. So when you have a solid team that recognizes that and really focuses in on the ADC, they can definitely make a huge difference and just use that to push for a win.
Amen to that. So there was the top lane was another really interesting part of this game. It was Galio versus Camille, and they were fighting almost nonstop. And there was one interaction that I found very, very funny. This is mid game, I want to say, because video time, it was before 31 minutes, where Camille, that was Piano Bra on the side of Royal Blue, puts the ultimate down on Kodo Draco playing Galio. And you know how Galio's E throws him backward and then pushes forward? So if you collide with terrain, it stops it, right?
Yeah.
So you can't go through terrain either direction. And if you hit a champion, it's the same thing. It stops you in place where that champion hits. So in the Hextech Ultimatum, I think the edges are coded as impassable terrain because he jumped back and just stood there at the end of the ultimatum instead of jumping forward and getting the knock-up to maybe save his life. And it was a really interesting interaction. I didn't know it worked that way.
That is very interesting. I didn't even catch that during my watch of it, honestly.
Well, I understand that, it's impassable. That's the whole point. It's a very unique thing to Camille, Rip Aurora. But to just keep him there solid, I think that interaction is bugged. I think he should be locked in for sure, but he should at least get the second half of that spell. I don't know. I felt like it was a little suspect.
I get where you're coming from.
But now I know to never use Galio E while inside Hextech Ultimatum. It just won't work.
I was just going to say, hey, at least Galio was able to get his revenge later with that perfectly timed E into the taunt when he had Camille under tower.
Yes, very good play. Man, I wish that we had the resources to just have the Raffle files for every game and be able to just follow those two players exclusively and just watch what they do. Let whatever else happens on the map happen. Just watching these two fight for the first 15 minutes of the game would be incredible. All right, I've got two more things about this match. The first one is just this crazy Team Unknown thing that they're able to do. At 31 minutes, 21 seconds of YouTube video time, they pick the Seraphine, just completely take him out of the fight. And then they go for the Drake, and Royal Blue decides, hey, you know what? We can still fight for this. And it's this other, just long, drawn-out fight that Team Unknown gets 4 extra kills. They end up with the ace, and there was no reason for Royal Blue to fight there. The Drake wasn't going to be Soul. In fact, I think it was only the second or third that they were going to get. They were ahead in gold. Their big source of crowd control in the Seraphine, their source of healing, was gone, and they decided to take a 4v5. I don't understand why they took it, but this happens in most Team Unknown games. They're just able to find these range avenues and goad people into fighting them for no reason.
Yeah, that's what I call the Teemo effect personally.
That's a good name for it. And the last thing that I have is that Royal Blue is just really good about being mobile and rolling into the mid game. Their early game is fundamentals. It's dribbling, it's shooting free throws, it's running layups all alone, and then out of nowhere they're dunking on everybody, and it's this really impressive style that they have that I highly recommend people wanting to learn how to get better and how to play as a team study, because it's clinical. You farm up, you only take fights when you know you have advantage, and come the mid game you've got more gold, which means you have more items, and you win fights. And it's exactly how Royal Blue played against Team Unknown.
Yeah, if you just know how to kind of work around those points and identify the best times to engage with enemies, you can definitely push those advantages.
Well, those are the notes I have from our semis. That was a victory for Royal Blue Esports, by the way, everybody. Congrats to them. Well played to Team Unknown. And Zeno, do you have any other thoughts before we move on to our finals?
Yeah, just that with that game, it was really cool to see the back and forth where throughout the match you weren't really sure who was going to win, and you saw a lot of just pushing back and forth, and that was really cool to see, and it was definitely a very effective collapse at the end to push for the win, which I thought was solid.
I'll agree to that. Great game, everybody. If you get the chance, I recommend making the chance to go back and watch that game. It was very good. All right, everybody. Our finals were Washed Up OGs against Royal Blue Esports. And as alluded to earlier, I think this was the slowest PLC start that we've ever had, because it was a Drake fight at 5 minutes 40 seconds of game time when First Blood actually happened. And that is very atypical of PLC.
I mean, yeah, it was also kind of interesting to see because one team was very much focused more on a late game build, late game champions, while the other team definitely had the early game advantage. I believe it was Washed Up OGs that had the early game advantage, if I'm remembering correctly.
I would say so. They had Nocturne, Zach. Who else did they have? They had other champions that just set up fights really well.
Nautilus.
Nautilus was on there. Yes, that is true. Hold on just a second. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Yeah, they had Victor, Zaya, Nautilus, Zach, and Nocturne. So they definitely have early ways of getting things done. Not necessarily because Victor and Zaya don't scale, and Zach as well, right? Those three champions do get a lot stronger later in the game. But the fact is, they have a lot of early setup tools. The early feather call, giving Zaya as a marksman one of those very rare hard crowd control opportunities in the role. Victor also gravity well, and the just massive amounts of damage that he can deal just by getting creep score, right? He pumps up the spells just by killing creeps, and so he's naturally strong.
Yeah, sorry.
The other composition was Ornn, Mel, Jinx, and Melio with Graves. And Graves is one of those champions who's strong at almost all points of the game just because his damage is so high and he's mobile. But Ornn and Jinx are not. They are very late game champions.
Yeah, and even Mel needs at least one or two items to really get going. Like, she can do pretty well early, but, you know.
Agreed. So, my other notes here are, why are you there? There's this roam from the Nautilus up to mid lane that, to me, seems really random. Like, why are you there? How did you choose that exact moment to be going up there? And I can't remember if they got a kill or they almost did. And then several minutes later, Mel, why are you there? She roamed from mid all the way behind the tri-brush and helped secure some kills on the bottom side. And it's just like, what? How are you getting these pushes and these timers to roam without anybody seeming to notice? Because that's crazy.
Well, yeah, I get where you're coming from. I do think that, at least with junglers specifically, they definitely have more fluidity and unpredictability. Like, yeah, they do have their standard jungle pathing and everything, but they definitely have more range to work around vision and to be able to catch people off guard. And, sometimes doing something unexpected can be effective. Like, for example, just to go off of a fighting game community point, so there were these two Super Smash Bros. Melee players back in the day. One was called Mewtwo King and the other was called Mango, okay? So the thing with Mewtwo King is people would joke that he's a robot. He was always focused on doing things perfectly, the optimal way. So what Mango used to do to work around that with Mewtwo King is he would purposefully do unoptimal, unorthodox, or things you just wouldn't expect to catch him off guard and to be able to secure wins that way. I think the same can be applied to League of Legends. Sometimes, if you try things from a different approach or just, do things that would not normally be done, that can catch your opponent off guard and lead to some wins.
I agree with that. Isn't that people use the excuse, oh, they won because of cheese?
Yeah, exactly.
So then one of my favorite play of this tournament, I am disappointed in myself. Here's the thing. I forget what happens in these games almost instantly, and I feel bad for that. I really do. But it's just this curse that's followed me my entire casting career. I just don't remember what happens. And so when I was watching this at 17 minutes and 32 seconds, there's a top lane fight where the Ornn gets advantage, knocks Zac into the passive, and is about to secure the kill. And when he jumps forward to get the second cast of the Call of the Forest God, he gets hit with the turret and dies.
I remember both you and Shazball were freaking out during that point and just unable to really say anything.
Yeah. I paused while I was rewatching it, grabbed my wife and said, "You want to see this?" And then I showed it to her and she's like, "What just happened?" And I explained it. She was like, "Why? Why is that what happened?" I said, "I don't know, man." All right. So in our finals, washed up OGs, I have a note here that they just have the hands. And a good example is at 27 minutes, 15 seconds of video time. Just the way that they move, the way that they choose to make these fights. This one was a low health Nocturne ulting in at low health. He couldn't kill the Ornn, but he was right next to the Graves. And so he puts the fear on the Graves, and as Graves is winding up a spell or an attack, he flashes to the other side, gets the fear, kills the Graves, and then dies. But it's plays like that these guys just know what's going to come. They know how to react, and they know where to be to make the fight happen in their favor.
Yeah, having that predictability, like the ability to be able to predict and to react to that quickly is definitely effective when it comes to League of Legends. Like, just that split-second precision can make a huge difference because, while as Shazbot has discussed in the past, League of Legends is a turn-based game in regards to, knowing when to push, when to react, knowing when it's your turn to act. There's definitely those micro aspects of knowing how to react on the spot as well.
So that's why I'm not good at this game, is because I am not good at or don't like turn-based games.
I mean, I guess that checks out. I don't know.
Little self-deprecation never hurt anybody.
Isn't that literally the meaning of self-deprecation, though, is to hurt yourself?
It's to make fun of yourself, I think, to maybe use yourself as the punchline. That's what I always thought it meant.
Yeah, in that sense, but I don't know. Okay, dictionary time with Xeno and the Snurks. Let's do this.
Well, while you're doing that, I have another thought here that before we move on to our last thoughts, Royal Blue has some amazing escapes in especially this month's playoffs in their semifinal and final games, there were multiple times where they just escape. We've talked before about how there's no reason for some players to survive certain interactions, but in these two games, Royal Blue were masters at it. They should not have been able to get out, and there was some point in this finals that made me write down that there are so many times that they do it. So analyzing when they decide to flash, when they use their mobility skills, when they throw down crowd control and run away, all of those things are really, really mastered and done quite well by Royal Blue. So if you're looking to get better at that, highly recommend watching through these games because Royal Blue do it exceptionally.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is it's definitely built around understanding your champion and how their mechanics work, alongside also understanding what your enemy has to be able to stop you. Like, for example, if you know, let's say, you're dealing with the enemy Mel, and they've recently shot out their snare and you avoid it, you know that Mel doesn't really have any CC to lock you down at all, unless they built a Rylai's or something. So definitely knowing that, knowing those cooldowns, those timers, and reacting with yours accordingly can make a huge difference and allow you to do those crazy escape attempts.
That is a really good point, and I ran into that in one of my games recently. I was on ARM because that's all I play. And I was hit with a snowball, and I was like, okay, they're going to come hit me. I'm Maokai, so I'll just auto-attack and heal up and then slam them back, and it'll be great. But they waited, and they waited, and the moment I stepped out of the brush, they followed. And then I had no vision, so I couldn't do anything to them. And that's a silly interaction I had never considered before, because if I had stayed in the brush, I could interact with them. But the moment they're in the brush and I'm out, I can't see them because there is no such thing as wards. And so I know now to be more careful about that and to use that concept in my future games.
Yeah, especially since, like you say, you can't land auto attacks in those situations, but on the flip side, if you're playing a champion that doesn't rely as much on auto attacks or point and click skills, you don't have to worry as much about it.
Exactly. So what's the verdict on self-deprecation?
Well, the Oxford Dictionary states the expression of a negative view of someone or something, criticism, or disapproval.
Okay, so not hurting anybody, just disapproval.
Yeah, well, in the sense of, it means, by definition, not hurting people, but it can hurt people, depending on how you do it.
That is true.
The potential to hurt.
That is true. All right. And to close out, unless you have other things you want to bring up, our washed up OGs, they responded that game like we tend to see Royal Blue do. It was odd to see the responding Roll with the Punches team get responded to and rolling with they rolled with their punches back. It was really, really cool.
Yep, very solid match to watch. Highly encourage you to go and watch that one as well. And, yeah, other than that, we do have, I believe, according to Riot's schedule at least, the next patch is going to be up for the upcoming tournament. However, they haven't
released the notes.
Yeah, the official patch notes have not been released yet.
I'm exceptionally disappointed. And by the way, that was Washed Up OGs are the victors of March, everybody. Congratulations to them. Well played to Royal Blue. They well fought. And yeah, I don't know what to do in our patch discussion portion this month because I have no idea what's going to change. Nothing in our current list of notes will be relevant. I don't have anything in front of me to talk about for... You said it's releasing on the 16th?
Yeah, on the 16th.
Well, then I think that's a perfect segue into when our next tournament is, and that will be April 19th. We will be holding the next PLC. That will be at 1 p.m. Pacific time. That's right. How did I think that was that was rough? Noon Pacific time, actually, everybody. I sincerely apologize. I've been doing things for the last 13 hours. So my brain isn't really working. Thank you, Zeno, for helping me stay a little focused.
Yep, no problem. Taking a quick look at the upcoming patch notes, in all honesty, it doesn't look like we're really seeing any PLC staples being impacted, so yeah.
Well, that's good to know, because that's the whole reason we bring it up on the podcast, is to point out things that would be relevant for the PLC. So thank you for taking a look at that.
Yeah, but like I said, it was a quick look. Like, obviously, some champions are getting changes, and there's some interesting changes in here, but none that I think are going to be really pertinent.
Very good. All right, everybody, then, as a reminder, April 19th, that is a Saturday at noon Pacific time. That is our next tournament. May has also been announced, and you can sign up already. That will be on May 17th at 12 noon Pacific time. Both of those links are available on Battlefy. Remember to join our Discord as well so that you can see all of our announcements and come play with us every once in a while. But with that, thank you so much for listening to the PCP. We'll be back at the next tournament, which again is April 19th at noon Pacific time. You can find us by searching Progenitor Circuit on YouTube, Twitter, or Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch, but you won't find a whole lot of streams on there. Sign up to play in the tournaments at battlefy.com, and we will see you there.